This week on MS Refresh, we're back. It's the roadmap recap. Microsoft is aiming for Google's bottom line with ChatGPT integration into various places, including Bing. Plus, 10,000 Microsoft layoffs this week, right after an executive retreat in Switzerland hosted Sting for a private concert. All that and more. Subscribe to stay in the know. This is the MS Refresh Show. Hi there, and welcome to the Matt and Sean 365 Refresh Show. This is episode 77 for the work week of January 23rd, 2023, and this month's roadmap recap coming to you from the East Coast. My name is Matt Wade.
And coming to you with bed hair from the West Coast, I'm Sean Bugler.
Mr. Bugler, what's up, man?
Oh, just a little bit of this and that. It's wild that we're saying 2023 out loud. Like that still... much in the same way that I'm going to continue to write the wrong date on like checks and not that I write checks, but like documents and whatever. Just saying out loud that we are in 2023 feels very surreal. Because I don't know if you had asked me 20 years ago, 2023, what's going to be new? I would have said far more interesting things than it rained a little bit in the Bay Area.
Right. I'm going to sound like my parents here, but you'd think we'd be talking about flying cars at this point, right?
Right. Yeah. Although to that end, we are talking about artificial intelligence. I mean, that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah,
we'll have
it is actually interesting. Like the amount of progression there with a bunch of the OpenAI work has been pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's been such an interesting conversation for so long now in the last couple of weeks that I think people are getting tired of how amazing it is.
I know, right?
What about you? How's things on your side of the fence?
Good. Well, we haven't seen each other in a while. We took a little bit of time off for the holidays just because things are slow in general. And then the beginning of the year for my side is a lot of things coming up this year, both travel, wedding planning, things like that. And it's just been kind of crazy getting back into work. So apologies to everybody for not having a bit more of a regular cadence in the month of January. But of course, once you come back from the slow time of the holiday, there isn't a whole lot to report on from the slow time. So we figured this is a good time.
I'm not sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. So I am. So you all know me as a nice one now. So, and
that's
I do want to say
2023, new year, we're changing roles.
That's right. I do want to say thank you very much for hosting me in California when I was out to visit over the course of early December.
It was really good to see you. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah. We met up in, I want to say, the city that formerly was the housed Redwoods. Is that where we were?
Yeah, Redwood City was where we started, and then we meandered our way down towards Palo Alto, so I could show you all the ritzy places.
Yes, right. And Redwood City had two like ceremonial redwoods in front of City Hall or something. I think was the remnants of the history of pre-sprawl California.
That's an indictment of our deforestation here in California, but yeah, they're trying to bring them back a little bit.
Yeah. It was a great trip though. We went to was it a tapas place that we went for lunch?
Yep, tapas for brunch. Had a couple drinks. I tried to take you to the nice coffee shop, and then ended up taking you to a Starbucks Reserve. That was the saddest Starbucks Reserve we've ever been to.
But then I got to go to the Rose and Crown, the English pub there.
Yeah, one of my old watering holes in Palo Alto, the Rose and Crown. It seemed fitting given that the last time we had hung out was at Epcot, where, of course, your go-to is your very first thing is a drink at the Rose and Crown. So it seemed appropriate.
Yes, and I got my Smithix there too, and I was a very happy camper afterwards. So, yeah, man.
Well, hey, there's a ton of news to catch up on because in spite of the fact that it was a slow period, a lot of stuff has happened around Microsoft that I think is really worth getting into. I get so emotional just thinking about it. You ready to rock?
I am. Let's do it.
This is the news.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to us, I guess. This is the roadmap recap where we'll talk about everything that's happening this month and next in the world of Microsoft, allegedly. Starting with SharePoint and Microsoft Lists, inextricably tied even here. In SharePoint, private drafts for SharePoint pages roll out this month. Be warned, that change may surprise some of your key page designers because their day-to-day workflows are upended by seeming issues with permissions. Spoiler alert, they're not. External file requests enters preview this month and general availability next month. which will let you share a folder with outsiders, allowing them to only upload and not see the content of the folder, nor edit or delete anything. Very exciting, and honestly, I don't know why they did not start with SharePoint and then go to OneDrive, but neither here nor there, it's finally coming. And a tool to migrate custom SharePoint 2010 and 2013 workflows, both out of the box and SharePoint Designer workflows, to Power Automate is on its way. That's expected to be generally available in February following the current preview. Thank God they did not wait until all of us had painstakingly migrated them ourselves manually. Microsoft Lists is getting direct approvals integration with the Approvals app in Teams and the Approvals platform in Power Automate. That comes in February. Time to move away from any built-in SharePoint approvals, folks, unless you're like me and don't use Teams. And list of templates will let you include rules in them, in addition to already supported columns and formatting. That's coming in February. Jumping over to OneDrive. Now that the sharing experience has been updated across OneDrive and SharePoint for internal sharing, the external sharing experience is also going to get a scrub to make things look simpler and hopefully work more seamlessly. Thank goodness. That's coming in February. Microsoft Stream, the classic Stream migration tool, is slated for a February rollout, allowing IT admins to migrate their classic Stream video to the new modern SharePoint-based Stream. Variable video playback speed is also finally rolling out in February, something my users have asked for incessantly. And coming this month is video analytics, showing view counts, retention, and other metrics for video owners that they care about to measure the impact of their content. Plus, you'll be able to organize videos into playlists powered by Microsoft Lists, allegedly, for organizing, sharing, and playback. That's also due this month. In a world constantly wondering if it's worth developing for the Apple Watch, the To-Do team stands tall. Microsoft To-Do is getting the Apple Watch integration treatment, so you can view, add, and complete tasks right from your wrist, coming in February. Now, I'll be the first one to acknowledge that I fully expected Planner to get quietly killed over the course of a couple of months and years, but I stand corrected. Planner is getting a lot of investment here. It's getting rich text formatting and task notes. It's also getting Viva Goals, project and key results integrated directly into Planner. The Planner app will be getting pre-made templates, and stop me if you've heard this one before. Did you know that even Planner is neutered in the government clouds? Well, soon, GCC High will be getting task email notification options like everyone else has had and expected for years. All these items are coming this month. Whiteboard is getting a few new features, including, quote, official support, end quote, for loop components this month. Though it's already supported them for a few months now, that's something that we'll be getting general access to, and the ability to save and share user-created templates. While the built ones, or rather the ones that are pre-built in, are great, it's nice to have that extra layer of personal autonomy. And next month, expect to see modern comments in Whiteboard, as well as a timer to help users run timed activities like brainstorming and brainstorming. And lastly, to bring us on home, in the world of Microsoft Viva, we find the following things coming soon. Viva topics are coming to Outlook Desktop, so you don't have to leave an email to understand key terms being used. That's expected in February. Topics will also provide a way to select the correct topic among several when they're similar. That's coming this month as well. That's going to be super useful for government agencies. Anyways, Viva Goals will let you bulk import OKRs using a standard Excel template so you can get going quickly, coming in February. And lastly, Viva Insights, formerly known as My Analytics, will soon suggest meeting prep time prior to a meeting that is a certain length, has few attendees, and isn't recurring. That's in an effort to help you be better prepared for that meeting. Jeff, coming this month.
That was the news.
All right. Nice job, sir. Just as a friendly reminder, everybody, we didn't cover any Microsoft Teams stuff because we cover that in a different episode. So next week we will be covering the same kind of concepts, but Microsoft Teams specific, because Microsoft Teams just gets all the love from Redmond. So they deserve its own episode for all the different stuff that they cover. But
yeah,
anyway,
lots to say about Teams Premium.
Oh, do you now? You have an opinion, Mr. Zoomer? Is that how this is?
I've got notes.
Yeah, right. So anyway, what were a couple things that stood out to you in the last 2 months.
Yeah, it was interesting from the moment we stopped recording for the holidays. There wasn't a lot in the way of like feature announcements, but there was a lot of news. And I think one of the biggest examples of that at first brush doesn't seem very Microsofty, but is increasing the more you dig, has been ChatGPT. It's a product put out in preview by a company called OpenAI based here in San Francisco. Matt, before we get into it, are you familiar with ChatGPT? Have you had a chance to see it?
I am, yeah. It's a really interesting experience. I think I like it. To me, it seems like such an opportunity to go after, or like such a great alternative to using Google search, because it actually will answer your question as opposed to provide your resources to get to an answer to a question. And I realize that Google aims for something similar with their snippets, but the snippets are, I don't think, nearly as complex, or could potentially even have some sort of curation efforts behind it. The one thing I will say is that I have to like force myself to remember to go back to it to use it. But even in some like niche places, like I asked at one point, like, how would you recommend, building a basic ticketing system using Power Apps and SharePoint? And
Yeah.
it went through everything that you should be doing to do that. Now, it's not going to get into screenshots and click here, click there, but the actual architecture and solution like build, completely correct. It was actually kind of fascinating that you get into that level of detail with some of it.
Now, for those people who don't know, ChatGPT is a chat based preview of an application put out by this company, OpenAI, as I mentioned, but it's powered by their large language model, GPT 3.5, and all of that means is that it's been trained on tons and tons and tons of internet data, for better and for worse, that it has been kind of taught to understand, to pull apart and re-put together to synthesize answers to questions. So as opposed to, the kind of chat bots of yore, where you go to Comcast and you say, "Why did you charge me this fee again?" And and Comcast says, "It sounds like you're complaining about something."
It sounds like I'm shutting this chat down.
Right. Yeah. Suddenly we're losing connection. It can actually take this really deep well of knowledge and it can bring it together in completely new contexts. So it can answer questions it's never been asked before, and it can do so staggeringly and terrifyingly articulately. Now, I don't want to say correctly. Now, Matt gave an example of asking a question that, again, probably has never been asked before. How do I build a ticketing system with, Power Automate and Power Apps? And it probably gave a reasonably correct answer. It has all the confidence of a middle-aged white man, whether it has the actual answers or not. And so I want to make sure that we're clear right from the get-go that while this is an incredible advancement, the ability to ask questions and get answers in really rich contexts, and to be able to hold state, to have the memory of the conversation available, so you can kind of continue. Like you can ask the question and then say, "No, that's bad. Give me another version of that." Like, and it knows what you're talking about.
Yep.
That it will and can hallucinate answers that don't exist. And there are a lot of examples of that if you go out and take a look here. So I want to make sure that we lead with all the caveat in the world of it's incredible and it'll sound really confident. And in most instances, from my personal experience, it has been accurate, or at least mostly accurate. Take everything that comes out of it with a grain of salt and be mindful of the biases that may inherently live inside that training data.
Yeah.
Now, what does this mean for Microsoft? Besides being able to outsource writing user stories and well, there's been a lot of chatter about the close partnership that Microsoft has established with OpenAI, starting with a $1 billion investment back in 2019, which seems not that far ago. And lately, rumors of an eye-watering additional $10 billion investment on the horizon. Now, what does ChatGPT get besides money? Well, in return, ChatGPT gets a close partner in the AI space. That means unfettered access to all of Azure's compute power, which, despite all these conversations around AWS and Google Cloud and blah, 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 Azure is robust. And it gives them a runway, this small startup, It gives them runway to prove out their vision of what AI can be. Now, there's also conversations around OpenAI being a prime acquisition target for Microsoft, but given how close the organizations are in practice and an arrangement that, given that $1 billion investment to start, ensures Microsoft has first dibs building products built on the company's APIs, it may not necessarily be as urgent of a step as some of the media personalities out there have portrayed it.
Mm.
Now, recently, a blog post was put out by Eric Boyd. He's a corporate vice president.
Sure.
AI something.
Sounds great.
He put out a blog post, and we'll make sure to drop that into the show notes, that not only is the Azure OpenAI service now generally available, so that offers enterprise-grade access to the large language model that first kind of brought OpenAI to the forefront, GPT-3, as well as their generative image AI service, DALL-E 2. So enterprise-grade access to that. But soon, according to the blog post, which again, check out in the show notes, we'll also offer up access to ChatGPT. And the kinds of things organizations can do, big and small, with this kind of AI is super exciting. Matt, you mentioned in the stinger that Microsoft is starting to incorporate a lot of this into existing services, and Bing is one of the best examples of that right now. Today, there's already that autocomplete that Bing uses is allegedly powered now by GPT-3. So small little things like that, but also the Bing image creator service, which is available in certain regions already, which allows you to use the DALL-E 2 API to create images that don't exist based on prompts. There's a lot of really exciting opportunity here. Matt, what do you think about how we can, how Microsoft might apply this? Because we're already seeing AI exist in a lot of different areas of Microsoft 365 and on the consumer side.
Yeah, I guess I'm interested in seeing what they do with it with relation to Bing, because having a chat experience to answer search-based questions or search queries is an incredible, I feel like, threat to the monopoly that Google has over search. And I know that they put together a couple internal red teams on this after the kind of evidence has shown just how successful it can be. And the interesting thing, and just reading articles, listening to podcasts, is how do you monetize a chat based experience without it being basically a tacky, hey, by the way, do you want to buy this? Related to that, which Google has set the standard with, where it promotes ads both in results and then on the side and that kind of thing, without it being intrusive, but still trying to be helpful. Whereas I think in a conversational experience, if you're talking to a human about something and they were to give you an answer and then said, oh, by the way, how about UX, like that just comes off, even if it's not a human, as just being a really bad user experience, I feel like. So I'm kind of curious if Microsoft would find it worth it to potentially light the whole search house on fire for the sake of pulling Google down, if that also includes pulling Bing down, because I don't know what kind of revenues they get from Bing, but I think the user spread between like Google and Bing, I want to say it's like 90+% Google and like 4 or 5% Bing, and then 6% everything else out there. I'm making up numbers here, but I thought that's what I had heard in some sort of reliable source, but it was some crazy number, right, that Google has. And I'm wondering if for that 3, 4, 5, whatever low number percentage that Bing might have, is it worth burning the whole house down for the sake of starting fresh and building a new opportunity for Google or for Microsoft to potentially get the customers and then figure out the monetization afterwards, which is essentially Silicon Valley since the 1970s anyway, right?
Yeah. No, I think you're 100%. I love the analogy of burning the whole house down to change the game, because I think that that's a very like startup-y move, and Microsoft doesn't stand to lose a lot except money by doing that. Because obviously, like ChatGPT and OpenAI services are not cheap, which is why they're talking about a $10 billion additional infusion into the company. But that said, it's not hard to envision that kind of, once they put it out there for a little bit and get everybody excited and everybody starts gravitating towards Bing as a destination, starting to wall up some of that behind subscription services. And to that end, something we didn't talk about in the news, but I'll flag here, that happened while we were out is Microsoft announced Microsoft 365 Basic, which is previously it was a plan that wasn't called that, but it was basically you could just pay for just OneDrive's storage. But now with this, I think it's like $199 a month or something like that. And it's 100 gigabytes of OneDrive storage. You get Outlook Premium. That's $20 a year. You get access to elevated support from Microsoft, which you've ever tried to get. Consumer-facing support from Microsoft is such a pain.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not hard to see them already toying with this idea of like micro subscriptions, which is what I would call this, $2 a month for kind of that depth of offering. It's not hard to see like, oh, and you get access to, our new intelligent Bing chat or whatever. Yep. So really, really interesting, really exciting. Because I think at the end of the day, like we're seeing competition in a space. We're seeing the potential for competition in a space that Google has sat on for so long. And I think we're all hungry to see a new take at that. And to that end, if anybody is curious to see what the evolution of search can be with a little bit of AI infused into it, kind of in the form of the Google snippets, check out there's a search engine called Neeva, Neeva. It was started by a former Google ad exec, if I remember correctly, and they're actually doing that. They're a subscription search engine, but I think you can try it out for free. And they use generative AI to synthesize the snippets that appear after you run a search. And crucially, it actually sources out where that stuff is coming from. So what I was talking about earlier, where AI will just make stuff up, and you're not sure what it's hallucinating and what is real. It'll actually like spit out the snippet and it'll source it with little footnote, 1, 2, blah, blah, blah.
I'm kind of curious how.
Check that out.
Even with ChatGPT, in theory, it has a source or multiple sources that it's melding together. So in a situation where it is correct, right, and it's not hallucinating something, I wonder how you source that though, to say like, well, I took, these 5 sources and I came to a conclusion based on the content that was there that this is an appropriate thing to say based on that, which I guess it potentially could do. But
yeah,
there's 2 things I think that are going to be really interesting to see what happens with this technology. And I know everybody, especially after it first came out on Twitter, was all lawyers, copywriters, editors, marketing. Everybody's going to no jobs. Everybody's going to get fired or laid off because we've automated it. And like, I think it's going to be more like some roles may end up being minimized in need, but replaced by people who are now more technical and have to have more technical experience to deal with the tool that you're working with. So, I don't know, people dealing with actual ledgers back in the 70s were replaced by people who understood spreadsheets on, computers. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I don't think that means that we lost jobs in the process necessarily. But the first thing I'm really curious about is, what does this make Google do? Because now they're in a situation where their hand is being forced in a way that I don't think it ever has been before. And given how large and powerful they are in the industry, I feel like there's the only threat they have. Even the U.S. Congress at this point isn't a threat to Google, or hasn't really shown itself to be, because frankly, I think they don't have a vested interest to actually do things they should, but also they just don't know what the hell is going on because most of them are too old, right? And it really, I mean,
no, honestly, it's true. You're 100%
even the technical ones. My congressman is an engineer, and if I were to talk to him, I have, about some of this stuff in person, he doesn't really know what I'm talking about. It's like, the second is, how do people put this to work? And how do they in a business sense? Like maybe you do set up a GPT-based chatbot for customer service or something. Maybe you're an airline, you're Delta. You want to have a way to not have to rely on so many humans and get faster results and faster answers quicker. Do you trust the AI to represent your brand on the off chance that something bad could happen or bad advice is given or some, and of course, you kind of have to look at it from a, if 2% of the answers are bad and it costs you a loss of customers or extra spending, but it saved you, 10 times what you lost in that process, is it worth it? And I'm kind of curious to see who are the first to break the seal, to rely on the AI creation as a legitimate and a reliable source of information from a company, brand, healthcare system, whatever, call it whatever vertical you want. At what point do you risk losing something more than the value it's getting.
Sure. Yeah, and I think Microsoft understands that better than anybody. I don't know if you remember Tay, the like Twitter chatbot they put out a couple years ago. That
Was that the
very,
racist one?
yeah, the one that very
Yeah.
quickly became like
Right.
like co-opted into tweeting like racist and
Right.
anti-Semitic things. So like I think
So it mirrored
Microsoft
humanity. Shock.
very much so. Yeah, and this, you know,
Right.
to my point earlier about, you know, it's trained on the internet for better or for worse.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all just a game of how do you filter out the bad stuff and, you know, correct for some of those biases that exist over a period of decades of information that's captured online. So it'll be interesting. But even at a minimum, I'd say that it's really great to funnel in all the drinks and mixtures that you have in your bar and ask for new innovative cocktails. That's been my go-to use case.
So that's where I think that they need to do a better job of kind of showing off the use cases of it, because that's a, you know, kind of laugh about it, but it is a good use case. But even better is like, can I take a picture of my fridge and have it tell me either what I can make, or tell me what I could make if I were to get like, you know, a limit of 2, 3, 4, 5 things from the grocery store on my way home. And
Yeah.
like, you could tell it via chat, but if you could just take a photo and it can like know the size of a standard, you know, refrigerator and just guess that, okay, you have this much chicken and you have, you know, that many bell peppers or whatever, and take that and run with it, because it can already do that. You can tell it to make a week long meal prep plan, or you know, I want to lose 10 pounds in a month. Give me a weight loss based or a weight loss prioritized exercise plan that doesn't include any impact training. Like
Sure.
those are really great questions to ask that I feel like most people don't really realize they can and probably should, you know, ask those questions of these chatbots, because it's hard to get information out of people when it comes to stuff like that. That's custom tailored to you. So,
I couldn't agree more. I think there's a ton of opportunity there, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what Microsoft does with it. I think 2023 is going to be a watershed year, both in terms of what Microsoft does with this, and to your point earlier, Microsoft is having its hand forced. And in fact, there was a write-up in the New York Times talking about there's going to be, I think, like 23 different like AI products put out by Google this year. One of which very well may be their own chatbot outside the one that currently exists in their little test kitchens app that I've been playing with. That's so more to see, and I'm sure we'll have more to say on this. The second thing that I wanted to talk about, Matt, you mentioned in the stinger, was Microsoft announced pretty sizable layoffs, them in addition to the greater tech industry. I think it was 5% of their organization, 10,000 individuals, and that framed up against the tableau of them hosting a kind of private concert with Sting at Davos, the World Economic Forum, was tone deaf.
Oh, definitely. And of all places, like of all things for you to go to, you know, it's the World Economic Forum is a collection of all of the monetary leaders of the world and all the major corporations and all their executives. And it's like, oh, like the richest of the rich and the most powerful of the most powerful visiting in Switzerland is essentially, you know, the storyline of all the 1960s and 70s Bond films, right?
Right.
Like
just completely disconnected from reality. And you know, to have that happen within like, I think it was a 7-day window of like, they partied with Sting and then layoffs were announced not long after. Now, what does that mean for Microsoft, the company? Well, obviously, because it's happened so recently, there's still a lot of reflection happening, trying to figure out what teams were most impacted. But the ones that we're seeing kind of outsized impacts for, entire teams working in virtual reality, mixed reality, and HoloLens were laid off for Microsoft last week, heartbreakingly. This includes the entire AltSpace VR team, which to date was Microsoft's only kind of public-facing metaverse play. That's now set to close for good in March, which is a bummer because I know that particularly within the pandemic, it had kind of become not just a refuge, but a virtual destination for, you know, conferences and things like that. It was a really interesting way to kind of experiment with what the metaverse could be socially. And for me, I didn't get a ton of use out of it, but I understood what it represented, you know, not just for Microsoft, but for the broader space. And I do want to say that while it's easy to stand on the sidelines for anybody to make jokes, it's important to remember, of course, that these are real people who are affected, which it's tough. Like, this is not an easy economic environment to be dumped into on the job hunt side of things. And so while it's easy to take jabs at the peg people, and by the way, Microsoft Mesh has been acknowledged as being one of their remaining priorities within the organization, or what does this mean for SharePoint Spaces, which are all like valid questions. It is important to remember that people were kind of at the heart of this announcement.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I'm curious to get your take on what do you think this means for Microsoft? And I mean, we just got out of Ignite a few months ago, and I feel like Satya wouldn't shut up about the word metaverse. Is the metaverse dead to Microsoft? Like, what do you think?
I think it's not. I think especially the mesh experience and mesh for teams is probably still a pretty strong priority, especially based on talking to some of the team that works on that over the past year or so. And I realized that team is not the people who would have chosen who to lay off and which positions to get rid of. But I think that they have too much into it at this point, and they also do see it as kind of a vision for them. I think it might tweak what they see as their vision. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think the vision with the peg people concept is not a great one.
Right.
But I'm sure they will continue to move forward with that. I'm kind of more intrigued, or like the fact that they got rid of the entire Altspace VR team. Like, maybe now is the time that we're kind of acknowledging that VR is not going to be the be all end all, next technology space. And hell, maybe ChatGPT and OpenAI is proving that the first group of people that it's going to take out is the direction that a lot of the tech field has gone into on especially VR, but to some extent AR. And I think, if anything, AR is going to be the one that wins between the two of them. But
Sure.
I think this actual interactive, reliable AI model is the next step forward. I don't think VR and AR. I think it's kind of trying to fit into an outfit that just doesn't fit and forcing yourself into it. Whereas the AI tools and building them into existing experiences and building new experiences based with it is really going to be the leap forward that we see in this decade, and not necessarily glasses over your eyes.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I think you're right to some degree. I think that obviously them making an explicit effort to hold up Microsoft Mesh and say that it remains a priority is telling. And I think, to your point, this idea that we're all gonna be using like AR, VR stuff maybe isn't necessarily the direction we're going. I would reflect on, coming back to Ignite, Microsoft's announcement of that partnership with Meta. It's not hard to envision that Microsoft is content to cut their losses with kind of general mixed reality and just play the role of productivity software provider. I think Satya made really overt, and I don't know if they had any sense that they would be doing this, these layoffs when they were putting together these talks at Ignite. But it seemed like Satya was really explicitly talking about like the enterprise metaverse. And to me, that seems like the direction that they're going to go. This is not going to be, for Microsoft anyways, we're not going to see consumer facing mixed reality, AR, VR, whatever. I think that Microsoft is, cutting their losses on the consumer side of things, at least in that space, and really going in all in on how this can be applied in a productivity and workplace sense. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think that's what they should be doing anyway. Let Meta figure out or stumble as they go through the consumer space, because why compete with Meta when literally the brand and the amount of internal resources that they're putting towards Facebook 2.0's experience is, if they're going to run off a cliff, let them run off a cliff first before everybody else does. Why compete in a place where you may not be able to get to? And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of AR VR use cases in the workplace, whether it's modeling, engineering design, all that kind of stuff. But I just don't think you're going to see the standard accounting office worker doing AR VR stuff just because there happens to be, hardware to support it. So I guess we would see what happens there. And I just maybe I think that, or I'm assuming that they're just kind of just finally realizing that they can't force it. If people don't want it, if you're just not going to make fetch happen, right? Like,
the hardware technology, I think, is just not there from a consumer standpoint. Even like there was some news in Bloomberg, I think, the other day that Apple is postponing their internal timeline for
I
their
just saw that
pure
too,
play
yeah.
like AR glasses.
Yeah.
Because the tech's not there, like the hardware is not there, the battery life
Yep.
is not there yet.
Correct. Yeah.
With the workplace, it's a whole lot easier to say like, oh yeah, put the big helmet on, versus me at home. Like you and I are not going to have this conversation with big dumb helmets on.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I mean, actually, so
do that.
In conversations we've had, I've been poo-pooing VR forever, but I actually did buy a pair of the Nreal AR glasses recently.
Oh, did you end up
And
buying those?
I did, yeah. So the cool thing about them is that they can be AR or VR. So if you just put a cover on them, they're no longer AR, they're VR because it just shows inside.
If
But
I cover my eyes like this,
right, yeah,
then it's
exactly.
virtual reality.
But this is where, and the way that these work is that you just the back of the arm for the glasses it's got a USB-C port, and you just run that down to the device that you're running to, whether it's it can be an iPhone, it can be an iPad, it could be a MacBook, or any of the Windows or Android devices out there too. So like, if I'm on a plane, I can just put these glasses on, plug into my my MacBook in the slot in the seat in front of me, and I can still watch movies or do stuff on it because I can see everything in front of me, which like that's much easier than dealing with a laptop that's open, especially when you have it open and it's like pushed back as far as possible, and the person in front of you leans their chair back, and like your screen gets caught, right? Like I'm always scared of that. And you just put your hoodie up and tie it tight, put your glasses on, and you got your audio and visual going directly there, and like that's a really good use case.
That's the Mr. Robot setup.
Yeah, exactly. But you're right. We need more, proving ground with it, which I still think, wayfinding, Google Maps and Apple Maps have every opportunity in the world to make essentially GPS specific AR glasses, or not specific glasses, but apps for those glasses, right?
Right.
I still think, some sort of facial recognition that ties into your LinkedIn, your Facebook, and your Twitter. So when you're in public and you see somebody that it recognizes, it can tell you that there's somebody that you recognize. I think those are the two huge, exactly, that make that hardware worth wearing as long as it doesn't look crazy. And this one doesn't look awful. And it also has inserts available for if you do wear glasses, where it sets them in front of the viewfinder. I'm not saying it's perfect or great,
sure, yeah, but it's the first step. We're learning,
right? And I found myself I have to force myself to use them to remind myself that I don't have to sit in front of computer screens. I can literally just sit on my couch with this thing in front of me and do things. And I might look crazy to somebody else, but I know that I'm doing, things that are visible to me at least. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, no, I'll be interested to hear your insight on that. I didn't realize you pulled the trigger on those. So more to come.
Yes, exactly. So, all right. Well, I think that's probably good for today. Thanks again for watching today and for keeping up. I appreciate a number of folks have reached out and said, "Hey, you guys okay? Did you die? Why aren't there new videos?" And I do super appreciate that. Apologize. It's kind of hard to keep communication because I don't know if we can really do posts on YouTube still. I think your account has to have a certain number of subscribers or something. We'll figure that out.
So to that end, subscribe so we can do those cool things like posts.
Yes, exactly. So thank you so much for watching. As always, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Leave a comment below to start the discussion. Sean, thanks for joining me this week, and I can't wait to hang out with you and everyone else again next week. All right. We recorded that. That's excellent. Very good. Very, very, very good. Sometimes I'm just so impressed by the level of quality that we're at these days, Oh,
I know. Top tier stuff.
Yep. Setting the standard for the rest of the world. Those Green brothers, they could learn a lot from us.
I was thinking the Duplass.